Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. I apologize that we're running a few minutes late. I was just thinking, ironically, it was about a month or so ago, I stood in front of you upstairs as the GBI got involved in the Arbery matter down in Brunswick. And if some of you who may recall, I asked that day for patience for the community. I know it's certainly difficult to ask then. It was difficult to give, and it's probably even tougher today. However, I do come to you on behalf of this agency letting you know that we are involved in this particular case, and I'll talk about it in a moment. But as with the Arbery matter in Brunswick, we will ask again for the community's graciousness and patience as we work our way through this investigation. About 10:33 or so last night, the GBI received a call from Atlanta Police requesting us to become involved in the investigation of an officer-involved shooting down on University Avenue at the Wendy's restaurant concerning 2 Atlanta police officers and a gentleman, Mr. Brooks. Upon our initial arrival, we began working the scene. We issued a statement early this morning based on what we knew at that point, and that was primarily based on body cam video that we had. I'll talk about why we were a little bit limited in what we had in a moment, but after the release of that statement this morning, we've continued the investigation. We worked all through the night and through this morning. And since then, we've talked to witnesses and also been able to see different video surveillance, both from Wendy's restaurant and from individuals that we've found on social media, and began piecing the circumstances together. It appears from what we've seen to this point that this gentleman, Mr. Brooks, was under investigation by Atlanta Police for a suspected DUI offense there at Wendy's. That sometime during the course of that investigation, he was out and engaged with 2 Atlanta officers, and that engagement turned into a physical confrontation. We have seen that physical confrontation on video. That during the course of that confrontation, Mr. Brooks was able to secure from one of the Atlanta officers his taser. We have now seen full video from the Wendy's restaurant showing this gentleman entering into the video frame, running or fleeing from Atlanta police officers. It appears that he has in his hand the taser. You can see that at least to the naked eye. That's what it appears. He runs a relatively short distance, looks like it's probably 5, 6, 7 parking spaces distance, and at that point turns around and it appears to the eye that he points the taser at the Atlanta officer. At that point, the Atlanta officer reaches down and retrieves his weapon from his holster, discharges it, strikes Mr. Brooks there on the parking lot, and he goes down. That information has been corroborated by a witness that we have interviewed, and that's the information we have at this point. I will tell you again that that's what it appears in looking at the Wendy's surveillance video to the naked eye. We have not digitally enhanced that video yet. We will. We'll be in the process of doing that so we can enhance it and see. But that does what it appears to be just from looking at the video. I will tell you this as well. We intend on making that video available to you and to the public today, so you all will have it and will see it. Our PIOs here, our Public Affairs Department, will work with you in making sure you get that before the day is over. We'll make that public. We want everyone to see what we have seen in this case. And that's why, again, I would ask for some patience. I don't want anyone in any circumstances to rush to any form of judgment. It's very easy to do in these cases on either side. We realize there's a tremendous amount of emotion, passion involved in these cases, and certainly with the way the environment is now, it is only enhanced. But again, I would just humbly and respectfully ask the public to just wait a minute. I want you to see what we've been able to see. I want you to have it and look at it as we have been able to obtain it and look at it. And we should, before the evening is over, make that available to all media outlets who want it so they can broadcast it and the public can see it as well. As I said a moment ago, we intend on digitally enhancing that video. That's something that we're capable of doing here at the Bureau. We will begin doing that soon. As far as a timeline is concerned, it's always difficult to put a definitive timeline on it. But as you might well imagine, because of the nature of this particular case and the circumstances of what we're dealing in the environment today, we have advised the agents to expedite the investigation. Any additional work that needs to be done here at our laboratory, we will certainly prioritize that and do it as quickly as possible. We want to be very expeditious in this case. We want to be very, very quick in this case, but we have to be very thorough in this case. We have to do it the right way. I'm sure when I speak to the public that anybody who had a loved one in this situation on either side, either as a law enforcement officer or as someone who has been involved in a situation where officers used deadly force, that they want the investigation done correctly, they want it done thoroughly, and they want it done right. And that's exactly what the GBI intends on doing in this case. Once that investigation is complete, we will submit it to the district attorney's office, and as with law enforcement involved circumstances, they will make the final decision on what happens with the case. But again, I just wanted to update you and update the public on where we were in this case. It's been about, I guess, 16, 17 hours since the incident occurred. Our agents have worked through the night, continue to work, and we will do everything possible to expedite the investigation so we can turn it over to the district attorney's office, and we will commit to you that we will provide you, the media, access to that video before the day is over, so you can have it as well and show your viewers and show the public.
We can take a few questions.
Yeah, we'll take a couple. Doug, go ahead.
Vic, based on your observation of the surveillance video, does it appear that the police officer was facing, or excuse me, does it appear that the man with the taser was facing the police officer when he was shot?
It appears, and you all will see it as well, it does appear in the video that he is fleeing from the Atlanta police officers, that as he's fleeing, he turns back over his shoulder with what appears to the naked eye to be this taser that a witness has told us they saw the individual have that belonged to one of the officers. And as he turned it over, you'll be able to see on the video the Atlanta officer literally reached down to get his service weapon. And as he gets his weapon, Mr. Brooks begins turning his body away from him, I presume, to flee. And it looks like that's when the discharge of the weapon goes off then. It's just like that, literally.
Do you know what the range is of a taser?
I'm sorry, Doug, I do not know off the top of my head. I apologize, I don't know.
You know where Mr. Brooks was shot?
I do.
Where in the body he was shot?
I don't know physically where he was. We'd probably be able to provide that to you, but I do not know right now. No,
Based
sir.
on the use of force guidelines, a taser is a taser considered a deadly weapon? Because I wouldn't think a taser could kill you. So would it be normal for them to respond with gunshot?
You know, I'm not passing the buck, but that's a question that's going to have to be answered by the prosecutor in this case. You know, what our job is to gather all the facts we can, do it as thoroughly, as completely, and quickly as possible, and then give it to him. And then that DA's office is going to have to make that call.
What about the fact that this was an impaired person? They had already determined that the person was impaired. Does that factor into?
It probably won't factor into what we do in the investigation. It may very well factor in what ultimately a prosecutor will do in the case, who has to make some legal decisions. You know, our job, having worn both those hats before in my days, you know, the hat I wear now is to investigate, collect information, provide it to the local prosecutor, then he or she will make those decisions from a legal point of view.
There's also a question that maybe a body cam might have been turned off at some point in all this.
I have no knowledge of that. No one has indicated to me any indication of any body cam being turned off. It's my understanding that one of them was either knocked off or broken during the course of a fight, or scuffle, but I have no knowledge of it of anything being turned off. No, sir.
Do you know how many shots the police officer fired?
You know, I believe it was 3, Doug, but I cannot swear to that. I don't know.
The decision to release the video, how much of the current environment climate played a role in that?
Well, you know, the GBI has generally had a policy to where if we can release information, we do. I think it works better in these cases. Having said, as a district attorney before, I know there's been a little bit of discussion and conversation that some prosecutors don't like that. We checked with the DA's office in Fulton County. In this case, they had no objection to it being released. So that's generally, if we had our way at the GBI, we'd release them every time. I just think overall, from a community perspective, certainly from a media reporting perspective, it's better if you see what we've seen. There's sometimes in cases there's information we cannot release based on the nature of it or what it lends to a case. But in circumstances like this, when an officer is involved in the use of deadly force, people have a right to know how it happened, where it happened, the circumstances surrounding the situation. And so I'm a firm believer, at least from my perspective sitting as a director of the Bureau, that if we can have video and we can release it, we need to do it. In this case, the DA's office did not object to it, so you'll have that hopefully before the evening is over.
Was he the driver of this vehicle?
He being Mr. Brooks?
Mr. Brooks, sorry.
I do not know, sir. Our involvement became after he was already taken out of the vehicle and placed in what we'd call field sobriety test checking, and then that's when our involvement came. We'll learn that hopefully during the course of the investigation, but I do not know right now.